Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David E.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yanji Denise and Ryan Kalei-Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs and Beachside Roofing.
Hello, everyone. Aloha. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for joining us here on the platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. This is Spotlight Hawaii. I'm Yanji Denise, joined by Ryan Kalei-Suji. And Ryan, today we are shining the spotlight on education.
That's right. We're going to be checking in with our interim superintendent to find out what's happening in our schools. We know that there, of course, is a lot as COVID-19 has impacted our education system, like so many other things. We want to get an update from him on a number of issues as well with some of the other things happening in specific schools. Joining us this morning is Keith Hayashi, the interim superintendent. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. A lot to get through this morning. We want to start off with where we're at with COVID-19 and, of course, its impact that it's had on our schools and children's ability in our community to go and learn. What are we seeing in terms of case counts, and what can you tell us just the overall status is right now with the trends we're seeing with COVID in relation to what's happening in our schools?
Good morning, Ryan. Good morning, NG. Yes, COVID for our schools, we continue to see an overall decrease in the number of positive COVID-19 cases, which is very reassuring. The Omicron surge was intense for our schools and the broader community. Case counts in our schools last week were down 50%. When we compare that to a week prior to that, case counts have dropped 86% since peaking on January 10th during the state's Omicron surge. If you think about it, twice in mid-January, after the return from winter break, we topped 1,000 cases reported in a single day across our system. Previously, our highest daily case count was just under 150 back in September during Delta. This week, our daily case average is under 100 cases system-wide. So, very promising and moving in the right direction. While it's encouraging, though, we continue to remind students and staff to continue being vigilant in practicing our core mitigation strategies to keep our schools and our communities safe.
What are your thoughts now? There is a lot of talk about changing some of the requirements when it comes to COVID safety, perhaps losing masks outside, for instance, or allowing, in some cases, students to be unmasked indoors. In some states, that's already happened, or at least to those who have been vaccinated. What's the discussion like right now when it comes to masking in schools?
Masking continues to be one of our core mitigation strategies that have really helped to minimize spread of the virus on our campuses. Right now, under our current health and safety guidance, masks must be worn by everyone: students, staff, visitors, contracted service providers at a DOE campus or a facility, both indoors and outdoors. Our health and safety guidance is developed based on a direction from and in collaboration with the State Department of Health. DOH's guidance for schools is aligned with CDC's guidance for COVID-19 prevention in K-12 schools. There have not been any changes so far to DOH or CDC's masking guidance for K-12 schools, and whether DOH and the CDC updates their guidance for schools or whenever they do, the department will take a look at how to best implement those changes for the field. If and when masking guidelines are revised and revisited, we'll definitely take a look at implementation at that time. In addition to consistent masking, we have added, we're very fortunate, as everyone knows, to have added the additional protections related to vaccines. As far as for vaccines related to COVID, more than 91% of our employees are vaccinated in our schools. Nearly all students are eligible for COVID vaccines, except our very youngest learners. And we'll continue to host our vaccination clinics and boosters at our schools for students and staff. So a lot of things going on to kind of help our students and our families and our communities. But definitely getting back to the initial question about masking, currently masking indoors and outdoors based on our guidance from Department of Health.
What can you tell us about what's happening with just the overall staffing? The staffing with teachers, many who have had to call out sick or have had to enter these COVID protocols because of exposure to the virus. That has put a large strain on the substitute teachers that are being asked to come in, as well as school administrators as well that have had to also step up. What have you seen, and where are we at right now with the demand for support for some of these teachers and the overall workforce with the number of teachers that are available to actually be in the classroom with these students?
Yeah, we're continuing definitely our recruitment efforts across the state for teachers, as well as other positions in the department. Office of Talent Management has worked to, we've implemented career fairs, visiting local graduate schools, looking to resume recruitment trips to the mainland now that travel is starting to come back. In fact, I was just on a call last week where a complex area superintendent was sharing that he and some of his principals are going to be traveling to recruit prospective teachers from the mainland. We've hired nearly 150 teachers since the start of the semester, and nearly over 1,000, about 1,100 teachers this school year. We seen an increase in the number of substitute teachers that we're hiring as well, which was so critical. It is so critical, especially at now when we're as we're returning and continue to build our workforce. Schools did experience those staffing challenges after returning from winter break. We're happy to see school staffing improving across the board. At the beginning of this month, there are about 1,500 or so substitute teacher jobs available on average per day across the department's 257 schools. Sub requests hit a daily high of over 2,100 requests in mid-January. For a short time, we did have more requests than available subs that were there to work. In the beginning of February, though, there are about 178 sub jobs unfilled on average per day. That hit a daily high of about 528 back on January 7th. The unfilled sub jobs are covered by other school personnel. They're being flexible within the school, as well as complex area staff in support from their complex area superintendents. Things, though, have improved significantly, and we're filling sub requests at a much higher rate now, closer to 100% actually in the last 2 weeks. Might have mentioned this the last time, but we have also a new recruitment website that allows candidates to learn more about teaching and working in Hawaii's public schools. We reach out and connect with our teacher ambassadors. These are current teachers within our system, each in a geographic complex area, who are paid for the time they're doing the work to find and for people to touch bases with them, with these ambassadors, to find more about what it is like to be teaching in Hawaii. They attend informational sessions, that we put out each month for prospective teachers, and I'll put a plug in that we do have for that website, teachinhawaii.org. So if there's any individuals out there interested in teaching, please visit our website, and you can get more information on the rewards it is in Hawaii to work with some of, I think, the greatest kids. And we need your help to support students in the classroom. So teachinhawaii.org.
One of the things we've heard throughout the economy, it's not just in education, but also in healthcare and other areas, is a lot of people choosing to retire, maybe taking that
Mhm.
retirement a few years earlier than they had initially planned before the pandemic. But just the, wear and tear of working in this environment kind of gets to some people, and they decide, you know what, I'll just take that retirement. Osa Tui Jr., who was on here, who of course represents HSTA, had talked about that as well, that there's a lot of teacher taking early retirements. What are we seeing in terms of retirement rates? What are you seeing, and how does that compare to years past? Are you seeing a lot of teachers take a retirement earlier than expected?
I think we may have teachers who and other staff that perhaps are considering retiring earlier. I have a couple of friends too that have retired this year in December. We do have efforts within the department that we're continuing to support our teachers the best that we can. I think our principals, working to provide those supports. And we want to be sure that um, as a system we can continue to work with them and recognize our teachers for the hard work that they do, and so that they're able to, hopefully stay within the department and continue to support our students in our schools.
One of the frustrations by some of the parents who have children in schools was the availability of distant learning options and remote learning options, and doing things digitally, as many people have had to transition to during COVID-19. That we know that the state has continued to try to find ways to fund these types of projects, and really making this more of a priority. But what does that future look like moving forward, knowing that there could be another variant on the horizon, and something else that could potentially cause more surges to happen once again in our schools? What is being done to build up on this virtual learning experience for students?
Well, the department, we are engaged in looking at different options to support students in virtual learning. Definitely, as we've shared, throughout the last year, that it's very important for students to, as much as possible, to be in person, right? And that in-person learning is essential, and we've learned that from last year, and the effects that negative effects that being out of school has on students. And when we look at students being in person in school, they're able to connect with their peers, with their teachers. They're able to access different services in school, meals. School is more than just the academics, right? It's providing that and the whole social emotional support for our students. Um, Visiting schools, we see students uh, enjoying each other's company, and all of that within that experience. Um, we have seen that demand for distance learning go down over the last 6 months or so, and as families re-enroll back in school. And we want to continue to encourage that, right? Because we know that that's where students thrive, right, as they're in school. Uh, for families who choose to continue distance learning, we're continuing our state option for that, being supported through the Office of Curriculum and Instructional Design. Different schools also, various schools also have systems. Some complexes have distance learning options also. One of the more notable ones is the Pineapple Academy in Lelehua, Mililani, Wailua complex area, under the direction of and support of complex area superintendent Bob Davis. And so there are different options: school level, complex area, state. Those will continue to be available for parents. We're again very encouraging parents though, and our students, that um, being in person in school with your peers, connected with teachers and counselors and other supports, is definitely a priority for us, and we will want that for all of our families.
Let's talk a little bit about the differences that you see there. We heard a lot about learning loss with that first year of students being off campus. Now students are back on for the most part. How is that learning sort of catching up, if you will? How is that going, and how long do you expect test scores and other metrics to be impacted by that year where some students were really engaged online and others really weren't?
We're just past the midpoint of this school year, and our focus is still getting our students on a successful path. Given the challenges of the past 2 years with COVID, even though it appears that things are starting to improve with case counts going down, it's still very important to remember that we're still in a pandemic. And it's not going to go away. And anytime soon, and we recognize that. And those effects are far-fetching. We're still in crisis at schools. It's important to remember that, I think. Even those schools are running and functioning, addressing the immediacy of the trauma that students have gone through, the trauma for our students and families that our families have been enduring is really important to remember. We have to take care of our students as individuals, care for their mental health and well-being so they can learn and thrive on the academic side. We're looking at data, definitely. We're making instructional decisions for interventions and acceleration of learning. We're looking at things like first quarter grades or grades, looking at high school on-track graduation data, universal screeners, both academic and social-emotional screeners, which are brief assessments that test critical skills that are predictive of future outcomes. And definitely the formative assessments that teachers do regularly in the classroom, and those checks, which help students identify student strengths and areas that they need to improve in as teachers design lessons in the classrooms targeted for needed areas of needed improvement. We have access to federal relief funding designated specifically for addressing the impacts of COVID. Schools in complex areas are strategizing efforts and that best fit the needs of their school communities, including, as I shared earlier, the social-emotional and mental health supports that are so important. A couple of examples, as talking with area soups and principals in the Nanakuli Waianae area, complex area, for example, they've purchased research-based intervention programs and an inclusion teacher coach at each of the 9 schools in that complex area based on their needs. And example in Lelahua, Milani, Wailua, they've implemented after-school tutoring programs that have been stood up to help students. And there are different programs and systems happening in all of our complex areas in schools, and they're designed by principals and leadership to best meet the needs of the challenges that those complex areas are experiencing. I think it's important that, again, that we all remember that we're still in COVID. We definitely want to get to the academic needs of our students and to address the learning loss. But at the same time, it's really, really important to remember that we need to also address the trauma component that students have been suffering together with their families, and I think it's also important to remember that as much as our students and families and communities have experienced trauma because of COVID, our staff and teachers and administrators are also dealing with that too at the same time. So it's definitely a challenge, but a challenge I believe that our schools and school leaders are up to, and they're definitely trying their best to address the myriad of challenges that have, in addition to what we normally deal with because of COVID.
One of the other things,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, one of the other things that has really changed for students is just the overall experience of schools, is celebrations and different things that have gotten postponed and put on hold. it is only February, but there are many who are looking to graduation season already, and what that will look like. We've seen graduation ceremonies that look far different than what we're normally used to experiencing. What do you think graduation will look like for the high school senior class this year? Will we see a return to normal with more family and friends being allowed to attend these important ceremonies?
Ryan, we really realize in the department how important uh, celebrations are, especially in Hawaii, and being able to celebrate with family and friends and all of that, what that brings in special memory for our graduates. We also, though, need to continue to realize that we need to do it safely and to ensure that we're taking care of people at the same time. And so, as we from where we are now to when graduation happens, we'll be sending out guidance to the schools. I think it's important for everyone to remember and to be flexible and to remember that while we want to do our best to provide those opportunities for joyous and memorable celebrations, we also have to do it responsibly and safely. And so that's really important. And definitely, student safety is at the forefront of anything that we do. So, we're monitoring changes, working together with the Department of Health, uh, and I just want our parents and our prospective graduates to know that the decisions that are made, we would definitely, if we could, have everybody celebrate how we were doing back pre-COVID. But that may not be the case. And so for families, to please understand that the decisions that we make definitely are difficult ones if we need to uh, have added restrictions on there. But it is for the safety of everyone. So that information is going to be coming out very soon.
I want to ask you about the challenges brought on by the fuel leak at Red Hill. We know that 7 DOE schools have been impacted. I believe one has been cleared to use water again. But tell us a little bit about that process. And for the schools that have not been cleared, has the Navy given you any indication as to when those students will be allowed to use the water on campus again?
The right, 7 schools have been impacted, and they're definitely dealing with the challenge, on top of the pandemic, has been especially challenging and trying for our communities that have been impacted and schools that have been impacted. It's been nearly 3 months, since our first school reported, the chemical odor coming from the water line. As far as from the department, we work quickly to identify which schools were on the water system, and we looked at our utility bills and such to confirm it. We shut off access to water at those schools and worked to comply with the Department of Health's orders. Our goal definitely was to keep our schools open for in-person learning, especially if we could do it safely, to provide some sense of normalcy for our students. We began providing bottled water for these schools for drinking, hand washing stations, and so forth, and they've continued. We want to thank the parents and students, for their cooperation and resilience during this very trying time, as well as the military for their support of our schools. They've provided water buffalo tanks, hand washing stations, and so forth, to support schools. Red Hill Elementary was given the water line was assessed by the Department of Health, and so we looked at flushing zone 1, which covers Red Hill, and that was determined to be safe for drinking, cooking, and oral hygiene. So our facilities team is working with the school to transition back to using the water. I believe we're aiming for sometime next week. That transition includes flushing water throughout the campus to eliminate any sediments that may have been built up during the stagnation period while the school's water was not in use. We're beginning to remove hand washing stations and water tanks from the schools. Also working with the cafeteria staff to restart on-site school preparation for school meals, resuming deliveries, and replenishing inventory at those schools. As DOH continues to clear the different flushing zones, we'll continue to work with each school to determine what those specific next steps are in transitioning campuses back to normal operations. So it's a gradual process. We want to be sure that we're continually working in coordination with the Navy and with the Department of Health and our families to ensure we can be sure that that transition back to school is as smooth as possible for our kids.
And just to confirm, this is only at one school, that there are still 6 other schools that have not, been cleared to do this. Is there any indication of when those schools may be able to come online? Any discussion in those talks of where they're at in this flushing process that might give an indication of when that will resume?
Right, Ryan. The school I'm referring to right now is specifically only Red Hill Elementary School. We haven't gotten word on the status of the other schools yet, but I'm sure as soon as those schools are cleared, we'll be notified, and then we'll be working together with the school, with the Navy and Department of Health to be sure that we're doing things in the appropriate manner to ensure that we can open the schools. But to answer your question, we haven't heard anything yet, but as soon as we do, we'll be sure to make sure we do things right and get the schools open.
I mean, this has to be such a tremendous burden on the students, on the families, and of course on the administrators and the staff who are operating these schools. Has there been any thought given to sending these children to schools that are fully functioning and that have water? I mean, given the initial thought that this would not last very long, and now, as you said, it's been 3 months, and 3 months of using those kinds of water tanks and not having access to the cafeterias and not having full access to, I mean, just thinking about that on a practical level, has there been any thought to sending these students to other schools, perhaps, if this goes on for longer?
Yes, there were discussions. We needed to weigh, different issues at schools, and that was considered. But we did feel that the process and the steps that we took, although we needed to move students to other hotels to be able to be brought in. They were with their families, right? And so and the transition back, it's been 3 months, but we're definitely anticipating and eagerly anticipating. We started with Red Hill, and hopefully we'll have other kids back in the schools and bringing again that sense of normalcy for them. But we did have considerations early on, but this is the options that we did implement.
As our time winds up here, this has been a trying time for so many in our community, from students to teachers, especially the ones that you work directly with businesses. I mean, it's just been a rough past few years, but we're also seeing how it's impacting our schools specifically through these conversations that we're having with you. In these final moments, what is your final message for those who are watching today? We know that there are some frustrations out there about some of the policies, some of the things that are happening in our schools. But your final message this morning for those who are watching.
Thank you. Just to everyone, please continue to support the efforts of our school staff, our teachers, counselors, our school administrators. I can assure you that everyone at schools, at our complex areas, and our state office are working really hard. Please understand that they are doing all they can. And if situations come up that might be challenging, please, give them grace and understanding. And if possible, you're walking through school, and you see a teacher or a custodian or an office person or any school staff, if you could just say thank you, that would be huge. It's a small recognition. It's a big recognition in a small way of the many efforts that our schools and our school staff is doing. So again, we appreciate the community support, parent support, and Yunji and Ryan, your support for allowing us this opportunity to kind of share what we've been doing and the tremendous efforts that our schools have been putting forth to ensure that our students are in person and learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today. Interim School Superintendent Keith Hayashi, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank
Aloha.
you.
Thank you.
Well, very interesting to hear. And it does sound like a lot of it is still, honestly, Ryan, a work in progress. They're keeping the masks on indoors and outdoors for now. We had seen some questions about that in previous shows, and it sounds like they're going to stick with that, even if there could be changes in other school districts around the country. For now, Hawaii is staying pretty conservative on that. And he did say when we asked him about learning loss and making up the academics that their focus is on that, of course, but really right now they want to focus on mental health. He used the word crisis quite a few times, talking about the trauma that these families have been through and the students as well, and trying to stabilize the mental health first and then deal with the academics.
Yeah, recognizing just trying to get students more comfortable with being back into the classroom and making sure that the classrooms are even able to be open with teacher shortages and with teachers being calling in sick or because of exposure to COVID-19. There has been a lot of challenges that the schools have had to overcome in these past few years. But the interim superintendent stressing once again the importance of having that in-person learning experience, and that they will continue to do all that they can to ensure that students have the opportunity to learn and to be on a campus, actually learning from a teacher and interacting with their peers. We heard from him a number of times of the importance that plays, and the ways moving forward that the department is really trying to put an emphasis on that. We saw there was some pushback in the community during the peak of Omicron, where many thought that we should not be having students back in the schools, but the state continued to push forward with that. And, good to see that those numbers, of course, continue to go down. Also, no clear decision or announcement has been made on graduations, but it sounds like that information is also coming soon, hopefully.
Yeah, and also interesting, when you were asking him about substitute teachers and just the numbers that he laid out in terms of the vacancies and complex area staff having to sort of step up and step into those roles. Thankfully, it sounds like that has stabilized a good deal. Of course, as you noted, the case counts going down tremendously as well, and that helps with making sure that everyone who needs to be on campus can be on campus. Great to hear from him about all the efforts that are happening there with teacher recruitment. He also did mention several times that if people are interested in becoming substitute or full-time teachers, there are plenty of opportunities for that. You can see that they're really doing their best, as you noted, to keep the schools open. He's saying that there will be distance learning options, but really the focus is on in-person learning.
Yeah, we heard an update on how those schools impacted by the situation at Red Hill are doing. Got an update there where Red Hill Elementary has gotten the green light to once again be using waters, but they're continuing to flush out the system. But there could be that implementation of that water usage back at that campus alone, maybe sometime next week. However, 6 other schools continue to wait for that all clear signal. We'll be diving more into the issue and crisis at Red Hill next week.
That's right. We are taking Monday off. It's President's Day, and so we want to have a little rest and relaxation of our own as well, and hope we wish you guys the same. But on Wednesday, Board of Water Supply Chief Engineer Ernie Lau will be here. We always appreciate him. He's been really so candid on the crisis and sharing all of the issues that they've been facing, really calling the Navy to task on draining the tanks and what needs to be done. We're going to be looking for an update on what's going to be happening with our water. We know that 3 wells are still shut down on the Honolulu side. What does that mean for the summer and beyond? He did say in the past that they are exploring alternate sites to perhaps drill some new wells. So we'll be getting an update on that with Ernie Lau on Wednesday.
Well, we hope you have a great long weekend, and we'll see you right back here for another episode of Spotlight Hawaii on Wednesday at 10:30. Aloha.
Aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Longstrugs and Beachside Roofing.